Hello everyone, welcome to another BAPT in Conversation webinar. So I'm Richard Owen, Treasurer of the BAPT, British Association for Psychological Type, and we're here to give information, events, best practice, advice and community to the psychological type world. And we're a registered charity based here in the UK. I'm also joined by another one of our board members and trustees, Susan Nash. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
This is your life. No, this is your In Conversation. It's great to do these, especially with people like yourself who've got great experience in this field and seem to be extremely busy doing all kinds of things with us and the APTI as well. You know, you've really put in so much work. I know that you've got a new book coming out called Flawless Facilitation.
That's correct.
Yeah, I know you're well known for your delivery of workshops and courses, which you do for a wide range of clients. Can you tell us a little bit about your sort of training and consulting background and where you've come from in it?
Well, I started off many years ago in Marks and Spencer's as a management trainee, and then I joined a company called Time Manager International, which was a training and consulting company, and that's where I got into training and development, really. When we moved to the States, I had a variety of roles, and the final one before I went independent, which was nearly 25 years ago, actually, was as Director of Training for Williams-Sonoma. And so I work with sort of a range of small, medium, large companies, non-profits, so, you know, from a Muslim group who wanted to improve the teaching skills of their Sunday schools, to small financial services company, to large companies like Oracle, Google, all sorts. So really across the spectrum, yeah, in the 25 years, yeah.
Okay, big corporates to Sunday schools and everything in between.
Exactly.
Okay, so are you distilling a lot of this knowledge gained from this into your new book?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I realize that Flawless Facilitation is one of those books I should have written a long time ago, because most of my work is not now so much delivering workshops as training people how to deliver workshops effectively. And so because of my retail background, I've done a lot of retail sales training, I've done management leadership training, customer service training, and that methodology is normally training internal people to deliver the workshops, and so facilitation skills are a key part of that. And I realized that my knowledge of type has been underneath my facilitation skills all this time. Unconsciously, I've been flexing to meet the needs of different types without necessarily realizing I was doing it. So it seemed a natural thing to do now, to just document that. So.
And who's the book aimed at in general? Who's your audience?
Thank you. I think the audience is, and it is actually in print, whether you can get it in the UK, we should be able to get it. So here it is. The audience really is anybody who wants to develop and deliver an active learning experience. So it's looking at what do you need to do to help adults learn, particularly adults of different types. How do you help them learn effectively, from understanding the neuroscience behind it, to how do you design an active learning workshop, to what is the difference between facilitation skills and presentation skills, activities, how do you present. So it's a range, and the last two chapters are, of course, are on how you adapt your content and approach to different temperaments, interaction styles, and how you utilize all 8 cognitive processes when you're delivering a workshop to make sure you appeal to all types.
Great. So you're looking at the diversity of how people approach their material and how they absorb it and how they process it. So let's say if you had a room full of my type, INTJ.
Yeah.
What would be the secret there? How would you deal with that?
I said, well, make sure you know your theory and that your concept is well researched, and you've got your sources of data and you clearly articulate it, and show how you can actually apply this in a strategic way. So and the challenge, as you know, is we'll have I wish we could just have an audience of one type. It would make life so much easier. But when we've got those different types, it just keeping consciously. So for everyone who wants the abstract concept, there's going to be someone who says, can I just jump into an activity now? Whereas our INTJs are probably, do we really have to do an activity now? Let's stay in that theoretical world a bit longer. So it's that balance. It's a balancing act, really.
So it's a real insight actually into your mind as you deliver. This process that's going on is not just the delivery, but you've got this metacognition going on of, what does this person want? What does that keep everyone happy? So,
many years ago, my lovely husband said to me, I can't imagine you being a serious trainer, so when he got up, when I'd bopped him, I said, well, as you do, you should ask a follow-up question at such a statement. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I thought you'd get bored, because if you're training the same stuff. And I said, well, you never get bored, because every audience is different. And as you say, half the time I'm in the content in the group, in the room, and I'm also at the same time thinking, okay, what am I observing? Am I seeing my improvisers getting, am I seeing them twitching, or have I done enough hands-on for them? Have I given enough concrete practical examples for our stabilizers? So you are existing on a meta level. Yeah.
That's great. So have you got any good stories of A, when you've got this really right and you've been really happy with yourself, and B, when you've got it wrong and you've said, okay, I need to learn from this?
Yeah, so the really right thing, I think, I was working with one of my clients that I've worked with for years and years, Puma, and we were doing Train the Trainer, and we got quite a skeptical group, really. Who's this woman? I don't know why she's using this model and not another model. And so I sort of said, well, here's the way I design courses. And I shared my acronym, which is TEACH. And I said, I just sort of said, well, you state the topic, then you do something to engage the audience, activity, question, find out what they know, get their buy-in. Then the A is you give them some abstract data, concept, model, theory, technique. Then you give a concrete application, so team exercise, case study, role play. And then the H is, how do you apply this? And I literally threw it away. I just sort of said, well, I've just got this thing, TEACH. And I swear, half the audience went, do that again. Do that again. So I went, well, here it is. And the module we've just been going through, here's TEACH for that module. And the next module we're going to be doing. And it was 13 years ago. And ever since, so TEACH was the breakthrough for me, where they realized that it wasn't just all super fluffy, let's all have fun. There was actually a core methodology behind it. And I found actually our rational theorists love it. I worked with me and TP, was like, oh, this is amazing. So the worst, I think, is when I misread someone's humor, which is a cultural and a temperament thing. And he was asking tons and tons of critical questions, which can be a good indicator of someone who has a rational theorist temperament, because they're trying to dissect and understand. And he was American. So I thought my British humor I thought I was fairly gently about, oh, well, looks like we've got some theorist critical questions. And he definitely had an improviser temperament, and he thought that I had made him look stupid in front of the group. It wasn't a theorist, it was because improvisers looking impressive is really important. And then he went full blown into his survival strategy, which was escalate and retaliate. And I'm going to take you and I'm going to raise you on. And everything I did, he came back at me. And, they're so good at that. There's absolutely I lost the whole group within about 15 minutes. And after, I thought, I'm never going to joke about critical questioning. And I'm going to think seriously about, as a trainer, I can unintentionally hit people's core needs and therefore stimulate their stress response and survival strategy that Yves Deleuze talks about. And so ever since I've consciously not done that, and it's helped a lot. So yeah, as you know, there's always absolutely great sessions and absolutely horrible sessions. Everyone has those. So yeah.
Yeah, this is the real danger of typing people, isn't it? And
it is.
You've understood somebody and just because you've had a good day and you've worked somebody out quite quickly, it doesn't mean you can do it every time.
No. And this person, definitely led with introverted thinking. So I thought INTP, actually it was definitely ISTP. And, that introverted thinking is going to look very different for an ISTP to someone who has preferences for INTP. So yeah, it was a big lesson, just be careful about that stuff, because you can, and he didn't mean to be mean. I had absolutely sent him into stress mode, and that's not my role. So
Oh, good. Is there any strategy in your book for recovering
oh,
disasters?
yes, there. I mean, one is don't go there in the first place, which is so. Yeah, I would say that 2/3 to 3/4 of the skills and techniques, if you use those skills and techniques effectively, you won't make it exacerbate. But there is one particular chapter just on how do you deal with those challenging situations, and how do you have an adult to adult conversation, and um, sort of fall on your sword if necessary to say, you know, I I misread the situation. I apologize. This is where you were coming from. Can we move through this? So there are some good skills and techniques in there about managing those challenging participants. Yeah.
Mm. Now, how do you deal with it? Say if there is, say, a big skew towards certain types in a group, and you've got like one as a minority. Like, how do you really adapt it then? It's to be fair to the majority. I mean, how does it work?
Well, that's a great question. I think that for the most part, the best thing to do is to try and use all those active learning principles. So if you give the 4 stages in the learning cycle are data gathering using as many senses as possible, giving people time for reflection, providing opportunity to create their own meaning, which is where they go from takers of knowledge to creators of knowledge, and then active testing. And if you incorporate those 4 elements, you even if someone's going to feel a little bit, oh well, that you spent a bit too much time for me on the data gathering, but if you've cycled through that process, you still will make sure that you'll pull everybody along with you.
Mm. Yeah, so it does engage the group, even if you're having to sort of play to the majority in a certain style. So the next question is that there's another acronym, isn't there? You've got 2 in the book.
Oh, yeah, they used to call me the acronym queen of Northern California. So so I couldn't. And interestingly, I was going to call it Teach to Learn initially. So I thought, well, there's a lot of theory that goes behind facilitation. People think it's just standing up and blah, blah, blah. In fact, my least favorite thing is if someone says to me, oh, I so want to do what you do because I love talking to people. And that drives me crazy, because facilitators and trainers listen to people. They don't talk to people per se. So I thought, well, how do I package this incredibly complex range of skills and techniques and make it digestible? And I thought, well, let's do another acronym. So, because teach can sound one way, but learn is definitely focused on the retention. So the L is leverage the active learning principles. So there we've got andragogy and pedagogy, we've got neuroscience, we've got the role of emotions in learning, and the importance of that social environment, keeping people's attention, and prioritizing content. We've got engage the audience, so all the facilitation skills, questioning, listening, repeating, validating participants, asking follow-up questions, apply active learning principles, so apply the experiential learning, so that's all your activities. I've created a bucket list of activities, not complete by any means, but ones that work in a workshop situation. And then the R and the M will recognize different learning styles. So that's where I look at temperament and interaction style, and nurture different thinking styles, which is where I look at cognitive processes and whole type. And teach is the introductory chapter, because I couldn't fit it into an acronym because it didn't quite work. So I thought teach needed its own chapter. So.
Right. Wow. In fact, there's a lot packed in each of those letters, isn't there? There's a whole world.
There is, and it's interesting at the moment. I'm taking the book and running a series of webinars and live training days for a large a multinational sports company, and we've got 12 two-hour webinars and a 5-day workshop with one-on-one coaching sessions. So I realized there's so much that I still didn't put in the book, but then I've never learned how to write short books. You know, I only write long books. So, and I could probably double the size of it right now with the additional content. So.
Yeah, it's like where you get like the whole of child learning and adult learning, and you put into the letter L and pack them in with something else. I mean, that's just one letter. So this is a huge like wealth of information. I'm wondering who were your kind of heroes in this world of facilitation?
Well, you know, it was interesting because the company I started off with, Time Manager International, they were more presenters, honestly, than trainers, because they had presence and they could tell great stories, but we had great content, great experiential, personal learning based content. So there was a guy called Peter Hancock, who's not alive anymore, who's my absolute idol. He could make anything funny. I mean, honestly, and it was a natural humor. It wasn't, because you know, some temperaments can tell jokes, some temperaments can't, and I don't think catalysts are great at telling jokes. What they are really good at is self-deprecating humor, and Peter had it in spades. I mean, I was with him on one of my birthdays, and I think I laughed all day. Who else after that? You know, it's interesting because I just experimented with what worked, getting people to feel safe. And, you know, as you know, Google have done a lot of work around psychological safety in teams. And it seems to me that psychological safety is such an important element. People need to feel that they can say anything and it be okay and welcomed and heard and they're validated. So I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, someone like Linda Behrens from the type content knowledge is, you know, amazing. I think in the facilitation, I sort of learned as I went, and just people to show you what works and what doesn't work. So, which is why I thought I needed to write it, because I haven't seen a book out that has what I call the nuts and bolts. You know, they say engage the group. Well, blah de blah. That's great. How do you do that? Well, you ask a targeted question, and you know, you repeat the question if they haven't heard it, and it's that sort of stuff that can seem simplistic, but simple things are not the same as being simplistic. So yeah. And you know, I had a couple of teachers at school who encouraged me, funnily enough. The one, you know, that's how I ended up doing economics A level, because the teacher was great, and a marketing degree because my marketing professor was amazing. Both, I think, use two-way communication, and that's where I thought two-way communication is the key to a lot of effective learning.
Well, it can be, so sometimes you might also have to manage people who are wanting to communicate to you too much, and it might sort of derail the direction of the workshop a bit. I mean, how do you deal with those kind of situations?
Yeah, well, the simple premise I start with is, ideally, you want to repeat what every participant says to you word for word, because the group may not have heard it. You validate the participants. Sometimes they don't remember what they've said until you've said it back to them. The challenge is if you get someone who, yes, wants to expand and let me give you 35 sentences when actually one sentence would do it. Sometimes you just have to interrupt to say, oh, you know, you're capturing some great points here. I'd like to just summarize to make sure I've captured them. And then you may have to use body language to sort of go, and who else would like to contribute? So, and occasionally, you know, particularly at the beginning of a workshop, you know, the average pause right at the beginning of a workshop will be at least 6 to 10 seconds. And sometimes you've got this compulsive extrovert, probably a get things going, who cannot stand beyond 2 seconds. So, you know, at 2 seconds, they're jumping in, and then you're not allowing the group process to adhere and create harmony. So occasionally I'll have just a one-on-one discussion and just say, look, I so appreciate you're being so enthusiastic and adding so much value. And my role is, to make sure everybody, even those who are a bit quieter, have an opportunity to hear their voice. So, you know, what could we do? Would you like to, you know, write down a point, and if something counts 10 before you say something, you know, so sometimes we have to have that one-on-one discussion.
Right, yeah, got you. So yeah, I mean, like you just talked about that, you know, the other side is bringing people out and giving them the space.
It is, and you know, I start with something that I got from a wonderful woman called Meg Ellis, because I've got the first 4 minutes almost every workshop set. Anyone who's been through one with me will know. I will start with, you know, hello, my name's this, and I'm a facilitator. What's the difference between a facilitator and a teacher? And then I'll do my prisoner, vacationer, learner script, and 3 types of participants in the room. Prisoners, and you just simply ask what a prisoner's thinking. Oh, I don't want to be here, I'm too busy. The manager should be here, not me. What body language do we see from a prisoner? And people demonstrate it. Then the second category of vacationers, what are they thinking? And the group normally says, oh, I don't care what I'm doing, but at least I'm not at work. What body language? And then I say learners, and what our learners thinking, what can I take away? And then I say, what are the body language? What's the signal for learners? And I say, and learners, they can be quiet. I'm looking for body language cues, not just verbal clues, because I ran a workshop, years ago, doing Train the Trainer, and on day one when I was going through the module, this guy didn't say a word, not a word. Lots of other people.
Mm.
Next day, he got up and did the best training practice I've ever seen, because guess what? He was listening to it, digesting it, absorbing it to work out how he could implement it. So I always say it's not about what you say, it's about, have you got space to digest it, and are you engaged non-verbally, if not verbally?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, I guess there must be another side to the facilitation, and that is how to plan the schedule so you don't overload people and things like that. I mean, how does that come into your book as well?
It does. You know, we talk about working memory and how the capacity of the working memory is limited, and whether you follow the 7 plus or minus 2 principle, or limit things to 3, which is often a principle of creativity. We do need to prioritize our content, and to do that, I use the must know, could know, must know, should know, could know. So literally a pyramid. So to really start at the top and say, what are the 3 or 4 things that people must walk away with?
Mm.
And that's tough when you study type, because, well, I mean, you and I are probably the same. We could talk about this type for weeks, and
Yeah.
let me share everything I ever know, and that's not helpful.
Mm.
So prioritizing in what do they must know, you know, what should they know really? If they've got a good foundation, what else can you add? And what is the stuff that you as an expert probably have that they'll need to come back to future sessions to get? So prioritizing that way is really helpful.
I get that. Yeah, there's that excitement of wanting to give them everything all at once.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that's particularly in the type community, it's very easy to fall into the expert trap. So someone from the audience asks you a question and you go, oh, well, here I go. This is my opportunity to demonstrate my incredible skills and knowledge and competence. And actually for adult learning, what you want to do first is you want to give it back to the group. Because in our type world, most people have got a good degree of knowledge. So, and I call that ping pong. So someone asks you a question, you say, well, that was a great question, Richard, blah, blah, blah. Repeat the question. What do the rest of you think?
Yeah.
And what that does, it does adult to adult versus the
Mm.
parent to child. Because otherwise, what you're saying is, well, let me give my point of view first. Now, if anyone's got some subsidiary, secondary comments, feel free to add them, but really, I've got it, thank you. So I think that's it is hard to overcome that excitement of wanting to share. So ping pong is the thing I do to try and manage that.
That's interesting. I suppose it depends what the situation is. Like if someone's come
Yeah.
to your workshop to hear you and actually get your opinion on things, and maybe that's okay. You can be indulgent, right?
Well, and it's interesting. I still think if you throw it out to the audience first,
Mm,
then you get it back, and then you take what the person's given you and you give your perspective, then you're validating that participant as well as showing point. Yeah, and that's one of the challenges. It is all situational. Sometimes I will absolutely answer because I know this is a very important, and I don't think the group have this yet.
mm,
And I would say I try to give it back more times than I answer it. That's my premise. So.
mm.
And yes, they can. And I think if they don't feel that their point of view, I, I think by not asking people in the audience, we don't validate the expertise in the audience. And it again becomes more parent to child if we're not careful.
Mm. And I suppose it brings us into conferences, presenting, like you said, at expert events where people are all sort of peers in the industry and so on.
Yeah.
Where do you see the differences? You're already sort of alluding to it in that last question, really, but what are the different kinds of audience that you might need to prepare for, and how are they different?
Well, I think one of the areas I've covered that I haven't seen anywhere else is thinking about task and group process. So when you're going to present something, there's a task element, the content, what is it you're trying to teach? And there's the group process element, how is the audience going to learn? Now, if you only give task and lecture, then some people, I mean, particularly theorists in the audience, they'll be okay with that because they'll be able to think, okay, I've heard that. Now I can go away, digest my own learning, come up with my own framework, do my own dissecting internally, analysis and reflection. The challenges with the other types, if you don't get to act on it and put it in your body, you don't remember it. So although you think you're getting it, it goes into short-term memory, but doesn't necessarily get encoded into long-term memory. So I'm a fan of please do some sort of engagement in every
Yeah.
conference presentation just to keep that group process alive. I mean, particularly in today's world where people, particularly the younger generation, they're used to being on their phones, and if you're passive for more than 3 or 4 minutes, the attention might wander.
So what about the other types? You talk about my rational theorist mind there, like, yes, obviously I'll go away and think about it for a week afterwards and
Yeah, you will.
apart. Like what's going to really help the other, let's say it's in terms of temperament groups, for instance, what's going to help those other groups?
So our improvisers, and I think we've probably had the least number of improvisers come to any type conferences, and I think that's predominantly because, well, improvisers and stabilizers, both of whom, as you know, share the sensing preference, one extroverted sensing, one introverted sensing. I think for our improvisers, they need it to be hands-on quickly. They need it to be fun. They need it to be moving around. They need it chunked so they can say, I've got this chunk digested. I've got this chunk, act on it. And the whole save your questions till later does not work for our improvisers, because as soon as you say save your questions for later, they're gone. Okay, well. So making it, I mean, their focus is probably going to be much more on the data gathering and the active testing, and they're going to speed through some of that, maybe reflection and creation, depending on introvert or extroverting, but to make it really hands-on for them. So as much as you can use props and movement and visuals and videos and keep it varied. For our stabilizers, it's tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them you told them. Use some good concrete examples, link back to the past that are relevant. I mean, both for improvisers and stabilizers, they need relevant examples, because for theorists and catalysts, they can take a concept and instinctively know where the concrete application is. With improvisers and stabilizers, the more we're explicit rather than implicit, the better. And for our stabilizers, being organized, getting there early. If looks like we're going to run late or we're not covering the agenda in the right time frame. Explain to them why, because they'll be worrying for you because, oh, well, we should be here now and we're not. So for our theorists who talked about a little bit, for our catalyst, I think being genuine, authentic, showing how the concepts relate to people, although they're instinctively going to do that. Again, psychologically safe, a social learning environment. All of those things work. And, you know, I mean, when you think about credibility, the improviser, you gain credibility if you're impressive. If you do what you say if you say you're going to be a facilitator and then lecture for 10 minutes, you've lost the plot and they're gone. For stabilizers, you know, being concrete and practical. For theorists, they're going to look for competence. So you do have to have that competence there, and that you don't need to talk about it, but you could have books around, or someone else can introduce you, or you could share a bio. And as psychologists, they want a genuine relationship, and they'll pick up if you're being inauthentic with them. So it's that genuine interest. So
that's interesting. It's interesting. You can work around competence with the props and things. If I wear a pair of glasses, for instance, you know, I can automatically raise my competency level. You know, there's certain ways that you can do that. I mean, this is the thing, because I mean, you know, certain types kind of excel in certain areas of life, and
they do.
I have to be hands up. You know, I'm never going to like match a lot of other types in their area that they've been drawn to their whole lives. You know,
Yep.
day for their whole lives. You know, like for instance, the extroverted sensing world. You know, I am not going to match them in their particular domain of,
no,
you know, whatever that indulgence of the senses might be. So I guess, like you said, you've got to try and fake it a bit sometimes.
Yeah. And just sort of constantly think, you know, have I done something to get it out there in the sensory universe? Have I brought in something from the past recently for the recalling? Have I given a team activity where they got an opportunity to be creative? Have I been clear enough about the overall outcome, the H in teach? Have I been systematic enough for those who have extroverted thinking? You know, am I getting those really good critical questions that show actually anyone with introverted thinking is tuned in? And of course, I'm fine with how's the harmony in the group, because I cannot not read that. That's always there. And then, you know, how are we doing in terms of being inclusive and making sure we don't cross anybody's values? So it's sort of that in their head all the time is those 8 cognitive processes. How are we balancing all of those? So that we're
Tricky.
facilitating.
Hard to do, right?
It really is. Yeah, but particularly I think if you're not, so for me, I know if my extroverted feeling is getting tweaked, I feel, oh, someone's hostile, and that hits my catalyst. I want everybody to be connected. It's harder for me to then focus on the other things. So it's working out as a trainer or a facilitator, what's your hot button which stops you able to be in that meta perspective? Because when I teach this concept, you know, it's a bit like at the movie Inception. You know, I'm teaching it as I'm doing it, so I have to do it as I teach it, otherwise it's not believable. So you know, if I say I value all types, and I have to actively value all types in everything that I do. So
yeah, that's tricky. So like you said, the extrovert feeling sometimes tricks you out a bit, and
oh yeah. I remember Eve DeLuna's giving a story. She said, you know, she was presenting to David Kearsey. Eve would always do the presenting because David Kearsey, I can't remember his INTP or INTJ, but anyway, he preferred to be observing. And Eve was watching him, and he had this really serious look on his face. It's like, oh, and she went, oh no, I've messed up this concept, he's not happy. And her extroverted feeling started going crazy because she also has preferences for ENFJ. And she went to talk to him afterwards, and he said, wow, he said, I was just taking that concept and refining it, and I've got a really good. So she had read it through extroverted feeling as, oh, he's disconnecting. And actually, that's not what was going on at all. It was purely that he was dissecting and analyzing.
yeah, I think it may well do that to me as well. You know, that trying to keep everyone happy but being stuck and not being able to keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
you know, that would be, it's an awful situation. And then frantically trying to do it in a desperate way to keep everyone happy is not.
That's right. That's right. Which then doesn't work.
No.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, do you also advocate co-presenting or co-facilitating? How does that do?
You know, I think it's really interesting. I think co-facilitating is a great technique, and it's really complex because, you know, people are different, and you have to understand each other's style. You have to trust each other that you both know your content. And you have to have sort of ground rules between you for how it's going to work. I mean, it gives great, it can vary the energy as long as you do it smoothly. I know my husband was facilitating one time with someone other than me, and another facilitator was presenting, and he said, "Oh, and to add to that, which is, I'm always fine if anyone does that from the side, and to add to that from the facilitator from the side." And she said to him, "Do I have the floor or do you have the floor?" So it's really important to get those ground rules established. I am facilitating also at the moment with, and I've done a lot of this actually with a behind the scenes catalyst, INFP. And whenever I'm facilitating, I'm the one with my in charge going, okay, I budgeted 5 minutes for that, and we're at 6.5. And yet, at the other hand, I listen to her do her behind the scenes where she goes for the quality and the depth where I might jump out of it. So just understanding that Jane is going to do that detail and refining those learning points where I might be, okay, now we need to jump back and get on time. So you have to really understand your partner and what they are bringing to the table and what you might do that upsets them and vice versa.
Mm. Yeah, it's another complexity to add to the mix as well.
It is. It is. I enjoy it though.
You do, yeah.
Particularly with virtual workshops, because now that Zoom is such a good technology, you know, it's harder. But if you're switching from one presenter to another, it can change the dynamic and change the energy in the virtual technology.
And hopefully it complements each style. So
Exactly. So they see one size doesn't fit all, and that everyone can be a facilitator and they'll still keep their natural self as they're doing so.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm just thinking we're coming to near the end of the webinar already. It's been really quick today. So, but fascinating stuff. And I'm just want to know a bit about what you might have planned for the BAPT conference in April 2020 of all years. Can't believe it's come up already.
Well, you know, I think I am going, I would like to do something, I think, on facilitation skills and techniques. I think, you know, I think that too often we've got great type experts out there who have the content knowledge, and for some reason it doesn't stick because we don't get the group process right. And if we can get, I mean, I've only ever had in my whole life doing this 2 groups that didn't love type, and they were because I pissed them off with hitting their temperament stress responses. Everybody else, I've had, you know, whole roomfuls of improvisers and they love it. So I just think if we can get it positioned in an interactive way, we're going to increase the uptake of type generally. So that's probably what I'd like to do. As you know,
and I think especially given that the type community seems to sort of be heavily loaded with a lot of NTs and NFs as well.
Yeah.
Getting us to concretize our stuff and really speak to the SJs and SPs might well be a useful skill to have.
Well, and I think, I mean, many years ago, I heard someone say, and this was many years ago, so we've come a long way. Well, you know, those improvisers and those stabilizers, you know, they really don't like this stuff very much. And, you know, they really do. As long as we present it or facilitate it in a way that appeals to their learning style. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well said. It's great. I'm looking forward to the conference.
Yes.
The BAPT conference, bapt.org.uk. Watch this space. I don't think we're releasing the tickets until either December or January. We keep changing our minds, but look out for the news on that. Lots of great presenters again this year in Milton Keynes, and So yes, 2020.
And, you know, Milton Keynes has some lovely walks around it. You know, it's very interesting. You wouldn't think Milton Keynes goes with walking, but there are some lovely choreographed walks around there. That's beautiful.
Oh yeah. There's some great canals and
Canals, yeah.
cycle paths everywhere.
Yep. Yep.
So your book is called Flawless Facilitation. Have you got a copy to show us again, just for a last reminder?
Yes, and it's thanks to Rod Toomey for the name, because he said, who's the audience? And I said, facilitators. He said, why are you calling it Learn to Teach then? So
yeah.
He said, why not Flawless Facilitation? So thank you to Rob.
Yeah, great name, and I look forward to reading it. It apparently is available on Amazon in the UK for £12.31.
Well, we could probably, I mean, I'm coming over, we could probably get it cheaper for you when I'm over there. But I won't be
well, if you're at the conference, you can certainly come and have a chat at the merchandise table.
I will.
But certainly worth £12.31 by the sounds of it, even if you want to buy it straight away. You can't wait.
There will be a copy in the BAPT library, and I think Rob Toomey is doing a book review in Typeface, this next edition of Typeface. So he's also doing a book review.
Wonderful. I've just had a message, January the 1st, for our conference registration opening date. Thank you, Chris. And,
thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Richard. Glad I was able to get the video sorted out.
Yeah,
okay.
Wonderful webinar. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon. And thanks everyone for joining us.
See you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.